Making money. Y'all think it's so easy, but is it really? When you think, I need to make money, let me become an entrepreneur, do you really think you're going to make money right away? No. And this is one of the things that we talk about in my community, the smell of money. So many people want to make money, but they don't want to work for the money that they make. And you don't have to, because a lot of you are making money just to pay the bills. And that's the wrong way to go about it. When you think about making money as a business owner, what's the bottom line? What's the time, energy, and money that you're using to get the money that you say you want to pay the bills that you really hate paying? I know it sounds like I'm talking in circles, but hear me out here. Profit margin is key. When you're running a business, you want a business plan, a financial plan, and a simple sales strategy, right? That funnel that you want your client experience to go through so that you can close the sale. This is one of the keys that you need in order to be a successful business owner to hit that profit margin goal. So if you want to dive in deeper, join the Smell of Money. The link is in the comments. Cash flow, confidence, wealth. Welcome to iDateMoney. If you're making money but still wondering where it all went, if you're ready to organize your cash flow, build confidence with money, and create lasting wealth, you're in the right place. I'm Lisa Drennan, wealth activator, creator of the Money Multiplier System, and founder of the Smell of Money community. If you're a multi-passionate female entrepreneur who's making money but not building wealth, this podcast is for you. Each week, you'll discover practical strategies to organize your cash flow, keep more of what you earn, eliminate debt, and build lasting wealth with confidence. So grab your favorite essential oil, take a deep breath, and let's sniff our way to cash flow, confidence, and wealth. Today, we are spending time with Nicole Kramer, who has spent 15 years teaching high school math. So what does a high school math teacher know about sales? Well, she walked away from that job, but I love having former teachers on here because they do the planning. They get the nuts and bolts in. They just don't jump in without the plan. She was ranked #1 salesperson at a Fortune 500 company, and she did this twice. So she's got some background. Now she's a TEDx speaker and founder of TNC Speaking and Coaching. She teaches people to sell using connection, trust, and self-leadership. And if you're lacking any of those, which I know you are because we all are, it's not something that's one and done. You just don't achieve it and then, oh yeah, I'm good to go. This is something that you work on every single day. So thank you so much, Nicole, for being here. I love talking to you and hearing your story about, that teacher salary. I think if I remember correctly from prior conversations, Beverly Hills making barely making ends meet. And then you're like, oh, well, maybe I can do this sales thing. So tell us the before story.
Yeah. Well, the before story, I became a teacher. There's a lot of great things about being a teacher. I loved math. I loved numbers. And I wasn't really sure what I wanted to be when I grew up. And I was in college for basketball. I was a basketball athlete, a scholarship athlete. And just thought, well, I like math and I come from a family of educators. Let me teach. And after 15 years, I realized I had a lot of friends that were in sales making a lot of money and it looked really cool. So as much as I didn't necessarily want to be a slimy salesperson, because that was my belief what salespeople were. I saw them as, just salesy, slimy, wanting to get their way, had an agenda kind of people. However, I liked all my friends. I thought they were good people. And I saw them go on President's Club trips and make all this money and win all these contests. And I secretly dreamed of doing that for myself and exploring what it would be like to, make commission and make a lot of money in sales. But I didn't have experience. And so I told myself a lot of lies, really, about why I couldn't do it. And, you either have the life you want or you have a list of reasons why not.
I love
And
that.
it was brought to my attention one day that I was busy making a list of reasons why I couldn't do the very thing I wanted to do. And as long as I kept building that list of reasons, I was going to stay right where I was. And as I started to shift my own beliefs, my own perspective, I had an opportunity to go on a sales job interview. A friend of mine said, "Have you ever thought about being in sales? I think you'd be great in an interview with my boss." And although I did not have experience, although I was scared to death to go on an interview where, I was going to have to answer some questions that I may not know how to answer, I went. I got my hair done at Dry Bar. I got a suit. I put my resume together. I did everything I could to kind of look the part. And I walked in and the guy who was interviewing me said, I think we got to the end of the interview and he said, "I think you did a really great job. However, there's 89 internal people who want this position and they all have sales experience. and your resume just says teacher. You've never sold anything. And in that moment, I paused and I looked at him and I said, I've been selling math to teenagers for 15 years and nobody wanted to buy that. And as much as it was a line that I said to answer him, it was a huge aha in that moment for me, because that's when I realized that's exactly what I had been doing. I had been selling math and teaching math. But I think we don't realize that selling really never has anything to do with the transaction that happens. The transaction is a result of the sale. And in my experience in that moment, I thought, well, I am selling math to teenagers. And he just looked at me, he said, you know what, that's really good. That's a really good point. Not only did it help me see in that moment that I was already a salesperson, but it helped me realize that when you know the right thing to say at the right moment, it can open up a lot of doors.
Mhm.
And that was a big aha.
So true. And our past experiences, especially as entrepreneurs, everything that we've done helps us in our business today. And like we never really reflect on all of our past experience to create the business. I think a lot of us get into the business thinking, I'm gonna help people, I'm gonna make so much money and, like, I'm gonna charge high ticket, and then you actually get into the nitty-gritty and you're like, "I can't do that, I don't wanna do that. That's highway robbery, I wouldn't pay for that." And we do, our thoughts are the most powerful tool that we have, and we can
Yeah.
convince ourselves of anything. But when
Yeah.
you go into it for the right reason, like I'm always telling my clients, "Stop chasing money. Stop wanting to make money because you're never going to make enough money. Because what's enough? Define enough. And
Yep.
if you don't believe in what you have for your product or your offer, whatever it is, if it's service based or a product or whatever, if you don't believe in it, how do you expect anyone else to buy it?
Yep.
And so the conversations we have when we can realize, wow, all of my past experience ties into what I'm doing. And so
Yeah.
I love that you had
Mhm.
that realization, and I bet you just floored that person that was interviewing. Yeah. Well, she's got a lot.
Yeah.
And look at you. You ended up
Yeah.
becoming one of the top salesmen. So what
Yeah.
were you selling and were you passionate about it?
Well, that's the other interesting thing is I always said I could never sell anything that I was not a consumer of. And to your point, Lisa, if we're not convinced, we can't convince. And that's where we start to become slimy salespeople. That's where we start to become the version of ourselves that, is being inauthentic. Because if you don't believe in something and you're trying to sell somebody something, it's out of integrity, right? And at least in my opinion. And that's how I
Yeah,
approach things. And so I
absolutely.
always said, if I'm going to sell something, it needs to be something that I love, that I appreciate, that I'm a user of myself. And about 2 months before I went on that sales job interview, I had started drinking coffee for the first time in my life. And it's not lost on me that, like, there are no coincidence. I believe there's no coincidences in life. And at 30
Mhm.
some years old, to start for the first time in my life drinking coffee, just 2 months before I got offered a job to drink or to sell coffee was, it was like divine intervention. It was like that was exactly how it was supposed to happen. So that when I got offered this job to sell coffee, I was like, well, isn't that interesting? Because for the first time in my life, I just started drinking it, and I was a huge, supporter and believer of it. I loved coffee, from the moment I started drinking it, and I'm sure that without a doubt, my energy around that certainly contributed to the success that I had because I was, lit up about helping people find their way to coffee, which I was newly in love with.
Yes, you definitely have to support the product or the service that you're selling in order to be able to sell it. So
Yeah.
when you left your math job, tell us about that scary move because, that security of going from, I mean, I'm assuming that you were doing sales on 100% commission.
I was actually not. I had a base salary. My base salary was less
Okay.
than half of what my teacher salary was. So already I was coming from a teacher salary and making this adjustment. And, when you start a sales job, whether you're commission only or not, you're not really making very much money from the beginning.
Yeah.
It's a pretty serious situation. And I was coming from not only leaving my salary as a teacher, I had a considerable amount of debt. And it was really all about, let me hit the ground running. Like, I've got to make this work. I've got to figure this out. And I mean, I had my budget down to like the penny pretty much for what I needed to do when I left my teaching job and went into that sales job. So not only did I have close to six figures in debt, in addition to taking a pay cut, but about a month and a half into taking that job, I ended up in the hospital really sick, sicker than I'd ever been in my life. I had pancreatitis and sepsis
Oh,
and
wow.
almost died. And I also didn't have insurance. And so very quickly, my
Mm.
money situation took another turn in not the right direction. Didn't have insurance, didn't have benefits, didn't have time off, and racked up six figures in medical bills as well, on top of everything else. So it wasn't an easy beginning. to put it lightly. But I think, there's a difference when you're running towards something versus when you're running away from something. And I definitely wanted to do anything I could to make that work. I was running towards it, but I also didn't want to go back to where I was. So I really had a pretty strong
Mhm.
motivation, like come hell or high water, I was going to figure it out. I've never been that sick in my life. I was in the hospital for 7 days. It was really scary, but ultimately, I knew I didn't have a choice. And I figured out what I needed to do. My mom moved in with me for about a month or two and took care of me, and I figured it out. And so it was definitely, things didn't go in the direction I wanted them to early on.
Yeah, and that's enough to set anybody back. And, I as an insurance broker, I have to say, everyone needs insurance. Stop gambling with that.
Yes.
Yeah, and that's pretty scary because you never know when something's gonna hit you as far as a medical
Yeah.
situation, and to be prepared
Yep.
for that is so important. Even if you have hospital coverage, it's so important. So for those of you listening, go get it if you're in the United States. If you're in
Yep.
another country, go figure it out. So when you got back on your feet again, was a motivator for you making money or helping people get that product in their household? Like, what motivated you to sell?
I'd love to say that it was altruistic and I was really looking to help people. I had one goal and it was to make money and be number one in the nation. Now, once I achieved that level of, I was very driven. When I make up my mind about something and I decide I want to do something, I can absolutely do it. It's a strength and a weakness because if I don't decide that I want to do it, I'm going to have a little bit more of a challenging time. But I knew that that was what I was going to do. I had this really delusional goal of I want to be the number one salesperson in the country. And I had this maybe unrealistic goal of I wanted to make all kinds of money and pay off my debt. And I knew that I wanted to buy a condo at the beach. I wanted to have a dog. I wanted to pay off my debt. Like, I wanted to have money in the bank. There were all these things around really my survival, if I'm labeling it correctly, that all of that was attached to. Once I did achieve that level of success, it dawned on me, and everything that I did to create that success was based on rapport, building rapport and relationships and building the know, like, and trust factor. So I was doing it in the way that felt good to me. But my goal, my motivator, my carrot, if you will, was let me make money, let me get myself out of debt. And once I did all that, that's when I became really fascinated in the whole psychology of sales and how we help people make decisions, how we have influence in our conversations. Because when I started to realize there's an art and a science to it, I became very fascinated. It's not luck, it's not chance. It's intentionality around your communication and how you make people feel and how you influence their decisions. And so when I looked back at the success I had created, that's really what I had been doing. And when you realize you've been doing something, it's like, ooh, let's dissect this and understand why it worked so I can wash, rinse, repeat and keep doing it again. So now I'm the person that can show up to conversations and have more influence in that conversation of where I want to steer the outcome so that it's best for everyone, right? That's really what we're always looking to do, the best and highest good for everyone involved in the conversation. And when you show up with the skill set and the confidence to guide that conversation in that direction, you can create a lot of outcomes that you're looking to create.
Mm. And so many people need to hear that. So, what helped you build up that confidence so that you could steer the conversation? And even though ultimately, your subconscious was saying, I need to make money, I need to pay bills, I need to pay down my debt,
Mhm.
you, that energy usually scares people away
Mhm.
because it's the wrong motivator. So, how did you craft your conversation so that you were showing the person and guiding them into, like, yes, this is the best decision for the company? I'm assuming you sold coffee to companies that
Yeah.
offered that, like, okay, that
Yeah, I
service.
sold
Okay.
break room services to offices. So if you can imagine what Google's break room looks like or Facebook's break room looks like I was the one that went in and I designed the break room to provide whatever services they were looking for it to provide, whether it just be coffee and water or snacks and micro markets and the whole shebang. So I would go in and meet with people and find out what their goals were for their organization, how they felt that the break room could support that, and then I would put together ideas of how I thought that we could implement that. It was great. It was a lot of fun. I got to do a lot of really creative things in designing people's break rooms. Coming from 15 years of teaching experience, I was blown away at what people offer in their break rooms because we were lucky if we had toner in the copy room as a teacher. And they were like giving hot meals and everything else that you can imagine and happy hours. And they were bringing in kegs. And, it was really cool what I got to design and create. But back to your question, although my goal, my carrot was to make money and get myself to a place of financial safety, my number one goal was always to help build relationships with people and help them solve their problems. That's really because I didn't have when I started, I had no idea what I was doing. I had no idea. Although I said that line to that guy in the interview, "Hey, I've been selling math to teenagers for 15 years." I still didn't know what to do in a corporate world and how to survive and apply, what I knew to what I was doing. And so, you learn by experience. I mean, there's no better teacher than experience. And my front-facing goal was always, how can I build a relationship with this person and get them to like me? And how can I help them solve a problem that they have? And if they don't have a problem, then I'm not needed and I'm going to go somewhere else. And I think that's really the number one rule in sales is like no need, no sale. Your number one
Mhm,
goal is to play and find the need, find the problem that that person is experiencing. And quite often they don't even know the problem, right? They just have
mhm,
symptoms or they have challenges that they're dealing with and maybe they don't fully understand the problem. Well, the salesperson, that's your first job. Connect with the person, build a rapport with the person, and then truly understand if there's an opportunity there that you can help them with. And if so, then continue to find, you're playing chess, not checkers. Continue to find
yeah,
your way into the conversation while you're continuing to build a relationship with that person. And, over time, sometimes challenges come up right away that you can solve. Sometimes it takes a while. There's now buyers, there's soon buyers, and there's later buyers. We as salespeople can't assume that coming in and building a relationship with somebody will automatically appease our agenda. That's why we want to have a full
mhm,
pipeline so that we're not always putting any kind of onus on someone as if they owe us something. Like just because you've built a relationship with somebody and had some meetings with them doesn't mean that they have to buy something from you. Your job is to find what the problem is, what the need is, and then come up with a solution that matches what they're looking for. And that might take some time, right? Depending on what kind of deal you're working on. But build up your relationships, build up your pipeline so that you always have things that are ready to close. And then ultimately you can prioritize building relationships with people and helping them solve their problems because it's never about needing a contract to be signed in order for you to be okay. You're constantly putting enough irons in the fire, if you will, to make sure that you're always creating opportunities for yourself and finding ways to help people.
yeah. Visibility, showing up,
Yeah.
connections are so important.
Yeah.
And that mindset of, I'm doing this. And,
Yeah.
actually your carrot wasn't making more money, your carrot was financial security.
Yep.
And I believe that's what we all want. And, when we have that thought, like, I really just want financial security, how can I be in my zone of genius to help somebody get that? And then when you find out, like, wow, this is really, this lights me up. Like, I can talk about finances and insurance all day long. Ask me any
Mhm.
questions about, Social Security, disability, or retirement estate planning, different ins and outs of health insurance and financials and profit margins. I'll be like nonstop hours
Yeah.
talking. Talk
Yeah.
to me about tech. Well, then,
Right. Well, forget it.
see you
I need
later.
to
I'm
take a
out of
nap.
here. So really being in your zone is half the battle and knowing how to strategically present that to get into the right room, to connect with the right people. And
Yep.
always think like, the ulterior motive isn't I'm making a sale, it's I want to help this person. I want to help me help
Right.
that person. Because
Right.
ultimately there's always something in it for both parties and that's what makes it so
Yep.
much fun. And I too used to think that salesmen were sleazy and, they always thought about their commission. And even being a
Mhm.
broker, I, think there's a lot of things that we could sell just to make commission. And if I won't buy the
Yep.
product, I'm not going to sell it. I'm not going to recommend it. If
Right.
you insist on it, I'm telling you the pros and cons, you can make an informed decision, but do your homework, gather the information and make a decision based on facts, not based on emotion or hearsay or all those people who walk around shopping around like, no, I mean, yeah, shop, but gather the facts and then make a sound decision so that you don't get burned and you're not saying 3, 4 months down the line, oh man, I wish I wouldn't have spent my money that way. And if you
Right.
have that same attitude as an entrepreneur when you're selling your own services, if you think sales are sleazy, you're not going to sell anything. If you
Yep.
think that you have to do everything for free, you won't ever sell anything. And you had said earlier about doing those services for free, like, the first few months, we get into this mindset, well, I've never done this before, so I should coach for free. I should do this for
Mhm.
free. And yeah, there's a time where you do some market research calls, you practice like, hey, like I want to practice my coaching skills. Can we get on a call? I mean, all the
Mhm.
certifications I went through, we used to have partners, accountability partners in our cohort and say, hey, let's be partners. Let me present this idea. Like, how did I do? What feedback do you have for me? And then
Yeah.
that gives you the courage to launch that beta. And I
Yeah.
always, when I work with entrepreneurs I don't need to do a beta. I don't need to do market research. I'm just going to create the course. Okay, stop doing that, people. You are
Right.
wasting time and energy and money. You do not create the
You're
course
wasting other
before.
people's money, potentially,
Yeah.
right? You're asking
Yeah.
somebody to invest in something. If you haven't tried it out, if you haven't run it through, some experiences, isn't that kind of unfair to the person going through it? And I mean, to be fair, I don't think anybody should ever work for free. But I think that's also about framing things, right? It might be for
Mm-hmm.
free in terms of the monetary exchange. There might not be an actual monetary exchange, but there's a lot of non-monetary value in things that we can receive. And at the end of the day, whatever we're doing, there should always be an exchange. There should always be some kind of an exchange
Mm-hmm.
and something you're getting out of it. And whether it's market research or a beta round of a program that you're running, there's always an exchange that can happen that makes it really valuable for you. And if you can afford to do it without receiving money, and you see that what you are receiving is the incredible value and experience that helps you make more of what that is, then I think absolutely. I think market research is one of the number one things that I recommend to people because you gain so much market research and understanding of your client. And that goes back to what I said earlier. Like, if there's no need, there's no sale. You have to uncover the need. You
Mm-hmm.
have to understand how they describe the challenges that they're experiencing, what the symptoms are, what they want instead, what they see as standing in the way, because nobody wants to buy your stuff. That's
Mm-hmm.
something that's a hill I will die on, and it's not a popular opinion. Nobody wants to buy anyone's stuff ever. They want to buy the stuff because everybody does things for their own
Mm-hmm.
reason. And as the salesperson that's looking to help someone and looking to potentially make a sale in how you can help someone, then you need to understand their because. And if you haven't taken the time to understand their because, then you are making it about you. And so market research helps you really determine what's someone's because. My ideal client should all have somewhat of the same problems, symptoms, challenges that they're dealing with. So if you do market research, you can find that out at scale. Right? Like, one of the first things that I ever recommended to my clients when I first started coaching is go do 50 market research interviews. Go find 50 people who identify as or maybe they don't, but you can identify as your ideal client, and just go ask for an interview with them in exchange to ask them a few questions. And you can maybe offer them some recommendations or some free coaching, whatever it is, but you're going to get so much from that. And you're starting without any of that if you don't do it. And it's really
Mm-hmm.
a lot more challenging, and it's a lot longer runway to start to sort things out and figure them out about what your ideal client actually needs if you haven't taken the time to do that.
That's going to be a real. That's so important to know. And for those of you listening, rewind. That is so important. If you do not do the market research, if that's the lie, if you build it, they will come. That doesn't apply in the entrepreneurship world. You really need to do the market research and find out what the pain point is of the client and then solve it. Do you have
Mhm.
the ability to solve it? Because we're not meant for everybody. And yes, we all have a million clients, but there's certain clients that you definitely don't want to work with. And just
Yeah.
thinking, oh, I need the sale, that's going to drain your energy and it's going to affect future sales. So you want to protect your boundaries and your energy and realize, yeah, this is suitable. This is a good fit. So are you not doing sales coaching any longer? Are you just focusing on
I
the TED Talks and
I do. Yeah,
you
I
do?
do keynoting and sales coaching. Yes.
Okay, so you are doing that. So tell us about that program.
So I just started a new program actually for it. It's called Unscripted, and it is a program that helps you develop not just the sales skills, but the practice that you need to actually, like, so many people start to learn things, but then they go try it on their real clients or their real prospects. And to me, it's like, how can we create a low risk, high reward situation where people getting practice with being more influential and having more confidence about saying the right thing? And so I called it unscripted because that's ultimately the goal. We want to be unscripted. Sometimes we start by learning skills and learning scripts and practicing them and getting ourselves to a place of competence and confidence so that we are able to show up to the moments that matter. And, the fascinating thing is, although I call it sales coaching, and it is, and I'm coaching entrepreneurs and business professionals how to have more influence in their conversations, it spills into every area of their life. They
Mhm.
end up having conversations with their partner that they've never had before because all of a sudden they know how to communicate at a higher level. They know how to have influence in conversations. And many years ago, when I first ran a version of this program, I didn't call it unscripted at the time, but I ran a very similar version. And one of my clients, Carrie, she came to one of our sessions and she said, Nicole, you saved my marriage. Now, this is after a session where we had learned a specific set of phrases about how to have more influence in our sales conversations, but she applied it like I told them to. I said, apply it to everybody in your life, your partner, your kids, whoever. And she did. She had a conversation with her partner one night and she said, you saved my marriage. She said, I did what you told me to do. And I practiced on my husband because there was something really important that we'd been meaning to have a conversation about for a while. And we sat down and had the longest conversation we'd ever had about it. It was so good. We both listened to each other. We stayed curious. Like, you literally saved my marriage. And I was like, okay, like, that's incredible. Do you want to put it in a video? She's like, I'll put it in a video. I'll put it anywhere you want. I'll shout it from the mountaintops. And what was really funny is she had also made a $5,000 sale that she was very excited about. But even more than that was she couldn't wait to tell me that it saved her marriage. And so it's really cool because it's not just about how can we have more business success and more sales. This is communication skills that will improve every area of your life as well.
I love that. That's so awesome. I'm so glad you're doing this and you're in your zone helping people
Thank you.
get this skill set. And now tell us about your TEDx talk. I know that I had shared it in the community, The Smell of Money. It was fantastic.
Thank
How
you.
did that come about and what inspired you to speak on that stage?
I think I'm going to start by saying something that might be a little controversial. I really think everybody should do a TEDx. Like, I know it's not what everybody wants to do, but it is it's challenging. It's uncomfortable. There's a lot that goes into it. But I became a version of me that I was very surprised in the process because it forces you to level up. And I already am a speaker. There were a lot of things that I already knew that I'd enjoy about the process. But, I wrote this TEDx and I wrote it as a message for the audience that I was going to deliver it to. And what surprised me the most is that I was really the one that needed the message. And me showing up and delivering that is what ultimately was my invite into becoming that version of me. And that was really the true gift. Like, of course, it's awesome to say I delivered a TEDx and I stood on the red dot. I was so much more excited about the version of me that I had become in that process. And I guess as a speaker, I'd always thought about doing a TEDx. I'd always wanted to do one in some capacity, but I also knew that they're really hard to get. And so I wasn't going to spend all of my time just trying to figure out how to get into a TEDx. I was going to trust that it would come to me. And that's after applying two other times a few years ago. I applied two different times to a TEDx and didn't get selected. And that was when I made the decision. I thought, you know what? When it's time, it'll come to me in some form or another. That opportunity will present itself to me. And that's what happened last fall. And a friend of mine said, there's a TEDx in my town. I think you'd be awesome. I think you should apply. And I was going through some things at that time that I just did not have the confidence or the belief that it was time for me to step on a TEDx stage or that I could even write something that would be the right fit for a TEDx stage. And so I told her no. And she's a very good friend of mine. And about 3 days later, she called back and she said, I'm not accepting no. I think you need to be on that stage and I don't have any control over it. However, I'm not going to let you say no to me. And I was like, okay, fine. What's your idea that I should talk about if you think I should be on that stage? And she kind of talked me out of a funk in that moment. And I said, okay, I'll apply. And she shared with me a story of mine that she thought was particularly inspiring that had helped her. And so that was the direction that I went. And it's funny because it isn't an easy thing to get. You have to audition and you have to be chosen. And it's also not an an easy process to go through. But like I said, I leveled up in ways that I didn't expect. And I'm glad I got to share. Another reason why I think everybody should do a TEDx, and maybe it's not a TEDx, maybe it's just everybody should share their story. I think we all have experiences in our lives that we assume is just about us. But ultimately, when you share your story with someone else, they can see themselves inside of it. They see perspective, they see hope, they see opportunity, they see possibility. And to me, that's what our stories are for. It's to inspire others around us and to help them understand what's possible for their own lives.
I love that. That's so beautiful. Well, thank you so much, Nicole, for being here, for sharing your expertise. What is the best way for our audience to connect with you and get into your world?
Yeah, thank you for having me. I spend a lot of time on Instagram, would be happy to connect with people there. I have some free gifts, would love to share with you. One of them is a sales call template that gives you exactly what you're supposed to say and the steps you're supposed to go through on a sales call so that you can have more of the outcomes that you want. So come say hi to me on Instagram. Would love to hear from you.
Beautiful. Well, ladies and gents, you heard it here on I Date Money, the podcast. You want to make more money? Change the way you're doing sales. Get into Nicole's world. Go visit her on Instagram. The link will be in the show notes. And you want a template for sales? Get started there, but then you get to make it your own. And I'm sure Nicole can help you with that. And if you're aspiring to do a TEDx talk or be a speaker on stage, connect with her. You can tell that she is an expert in this field. And guys, number one, Fortune 500 twice in sales. You have to remember when you think about obtaining money, what's the ultimate goal? Because remember, it doesn't matter how much money you have, it's what you do with it. If today's episode helped you, don't keep it to yourself. Share it with another entrepreneur who's ready to build wealth with confidence. And if you're ready to go deeper, come join us inside The Smell of Money, where we turn these conversations into action. Before you go, grab your favorite essential oil, take one deep breath in, and slowly exhale. Breathe in cash flow, exhale overwhelm. Breathe in confidence, exhale doubt. Breathe in wealth and trust the woman you're becoming. Until next time, cash flow, confidence, wealth. This is Lisa Drennan, and you've been listening to iDateMoney. Keep trusting yourself one money move at a time.